UFC Fight Night this weekend. In the main event, you got Sodiq Yusuff taking on Edson Barboza, again from the UFC Apex, but it is what it is. The UFC loves going back to the Apex, but thankfully, next week, Abu Dhabi, Makhachev, Oliveira for the lightweight championship. But first, of course, this card with Sodiq Yusuff and Edson Barboza headlining. You get 11 fights on this one. It's a decent card. There's some fights. I think last week's Fight Night card was a little bit better, honestly, but there are some fights. Adrian Yanez taking on Jonathan Martinez. That is a banger. Michel Pereira taking on Andre Petroski. Edgar Chairez versus Daniel Lacerda. They will have the rematch on this card. So there's fights. Christian Rodriguez, Cameron Saaiman, and also buried in the card, Chris Gutierrez versus Alatengheili. Don't know why that's so low on the card. But again, it's an 11-fight card this Saturday night. And folks, if you haven't yet, though, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for some more UFC here on the channel. Before we get into this card right here, we will talk about the Contender Series. It is the final week of the Contender Series, week number 10, and there are 6 fights on the Contender this week, primarily because of the first fight here that we're going to talk about. We've got Bittencourt taking on Lucas Rocha. Last week, a weight miss from Rocha, so now here you go, you get the rematch, one of the rematches. They're finally going to fight, not at 25 anymore, though. It's going to be 135 pounds. I'm going to take Bittencourt to win. I mean, again, I think he's the better fighter all around. Both these guys coming off big winning streaks. Rocha's 16-1, but I think Bittencourt does go out there and pick up the victory. He's the bigger fighter. It's just Rocha's Rocha's not that tall. He's 5'2". Again, I know Bittencourt's not that tall either. He's 5'4", but I'm going to take Bittencourt to win this fight. I think he's better all around. I think his jiu-jitsu game's better. I think he's able to outstrike Rocha. I think as long as he remains out the way of the power shots that Rocha is going to throw, Bittencourt should be able to win. So I'm going to take Bittencourt to win this fight by decision. Next up, we've got Iskov taking on Markel Medeiros in this one. Close fight for me. I'll take Iskov to win this fight, though. He's coming in this fight 10-2, taking on Markel Medeiros, who's coming off of fights in Fury FC. I think Iskov is the better striker. I think he's got more power. I think he picks up the victory. I think, again, the Belgian fighter goes out there and picks up a first-round knockout, or fights out of Belgium from Luxembourg. Next up, we have got a fight here between Torres Finney and Yuri Panfarov. So the Russian polar bear Yuri Panfarov was on Dana White looking for a fight. Same with Connor Matthews, who we're going to talk about in a minute. But Yuri, of course, comes off of that win. It was a combat zone card I think he went to, right? Yeah, so it's a combat zone card. He beats guys 4-4. He is an underdog in this fight. And a lot of people on Tapology are going with Yuri Panfarov to win this fight. I don't see it. I didn't think he looked too impressive in the Contender Series. I think his striking game, and Matt Serra and Dana White talked about this a lot on Dana White looking for a fight. His striking game leaves a lot to be desired. He's good on the ground, sure, but if you're able to keep him standing, he's not all that great. And he's taken on a guy here in Torres Finney who Finney's been fighting in Aries FC. He's got a lot of power on the feet. I think it's going to be really tough for Yuri Panfarov to keep up with the striking game of Torres Finney. Now, again, this fight is completely based on if Panfarov can get this fight down. I don't think he's able to. I think Finney's able to keep him up, and I think Finney's going to go out there and get a first-round knockout. Again, I don't think Panfarov's able to ground Finney for the entire fight. So even if, again, he does get the takedown in the first round, I think, again, every round starts on the feet. I think Finney is able to win the fight. I'm going to take the favorite on paper, minus 225, but on Tapology, huge underdog. I don't see why. I don't see why he's such a big underdog on Tapology. I'm going to go with the odds-on favorite. I'm taking Finney to win this fight by first-round knockout. Next up, Connor Matthews taking on Jair Fares. Matthews is a pretty sizable underdog, which makes sense. Fares is 10-0. This is a guy, again, a Brazilian fighter who has not been that active. His last fight was 3 months ago, and before that, a fight 4 years ahead of that in Brazil. So he fought when he was 26, then a fight 4 years later when he was 30. Taking on Connor Matthews, Massachusetts-born fighter, comes off that combat zone victory against Andrew Cruz, where he won it by submission. I think Fares wins the fight. I think he's all around better on the feet, so I'm gonna take him to win this fight by first round knockout. And then we've got 2 more, because of course 6 fights on this Contender Series card. You've got Rickson taking on Andre Lima. Lima is a minus 225 favorite, taking on the plus 165 dog in Rickson. Gonna take Lima to win this fight. I think he's the way better fighter. I think the striking game's better. Again, Contender Series guys probably looking for a finish. I know it's a fight at 125 pounds at flyweight. I still think Andre Lima, though, goes out there and picks up a second round finish. And then in the final fight here of the Contender Series, you're gonna have Ramon Tavares taking on Cortavius Ramoyes. You have the St. Louis fighter here in Cortavius taking on Tavares. Think Cortavius wins the fight. All around, way better jiu-jitsu game, way more skilled on the ground, coming off an LFA submission win 3 months ago, taking on Tavares, who is coming off that Contender Series loss 4 weeks ago. It's a second run, the Contender. I know it was an early stoppage. Still, though, I think Cortavius is better. I think he goes out there. I think he gets the submission. I'm going to go a second round sub for Cortavius to finish off the Contender Series in 2023. Okay, on now to this 11-fight card. We are starting things off here with our first fight being Tainara Lisboa taking on Ravena Oliveira. Interesting first fight. 3 out of these first 4 are going to be women's fights. But yeah, our first one being Lisboa and Oliveira. For Lisboa, her first fight in the UFC and her only fight so far in the UFC was that win over Jessica Rose Clark. She went out there, she beat Jessica Rose Clark by a 3rd round submission. She's taken on her opponent here in Ravena Oliveira, who for Oliveira has not fought obviously so far in the UFC. She's 7-1-1. Interesting, start so far to her, or interesting, just run so far in professional MMA because she hasn't really beaten anybody. Her last fight, it was, honestly, this is an interesting sighting for me because her last fight is a win over Simone de Silva, who, it was 8-5. Before that, she beat a bunch of fighters who were 0-0, 0-1. That's the only fighter she's beaten in her entire career who has a winning record. And now you get her in a UFC spot against Tainara Lisboa. Now, I'm not saying Lisboa is a world beater by any stretch of the imagination. She's not. Again, one fight in the UFC. It's a win over Jessica Rose Clark, who's now out of the promotion where, again, Jessica Rose Clark's grappling was absolutely horrible as she went on in her UFC career. So now you get Lisboa and Oliveira. It's just a weird fight. It just is. You get the 2 Brazilian fighters in this fight. Oliveira's striking game is better. Lisboa's grappling game is going to be better here. I mean, I wouldn't completely count out the striking game of Lisboa as well. Before the UFC run, of course, for Lisboa, like Oliveira, it wasn't that impressive. So it's a weird fight because, again, Tainara Lisboa beat a bad Jessica Rose Clark, at least at that point in Rose Clark's career. And then Oliveira hasn't really fought anybody. I mean, I'll take the -380 favorite here in Tainara Lisboa. Are you betting on this fight? No, it doesn't make sense to do that. But I think Lisboa is going to win the fight. Again, I think the grappling game's better, and that's really where we're looking at in this fight. I think she's able to get takedowns. I think she's able to threaten with submissions. I'm not going to pick the submission pick because I think Oliveira is decent enough defensively on the ground to get out of stuff like that. But I still think Lisboa wins the fight. I'm going to take her to get this one done by unanimous decision. Okay, another women's fight now. We have got Ashley Yoder taking on Emily Ducote in this fight. I'm surprised Yoder was still fighting. I didn't know that, honestly. But she's 8-8 professionally. Yes, you didn't get that one wrong. 8-8, and then Ducote is 12-8. It's not the greatest fight. Emily Ducote was ranked at one point in time because her first UFC fight coming in from Invicta, where she was the Invicta strawweight champion. She comes in, she beats Jessica Penne by unanimous decision. She kicks the legs out of Jessica Penne throughout that entire fight. She turns that into a fight where she loses to Angela Hill, then loses to Lupita Godinez in her next one after that. I mean, so she goes out there, she outstrikes Penne, and then she gets outstruck by Hill, outstruck by Godinez, and now here she is against Yoder. Both of her fights, and all 3 of her fights have been good back and forth fights where, again, Ducote has shown the striking game. She has gotten into just fist fights on the feet, really, where, again, she's doing some kicking as well, but it's just really Ducote's been getting into a lot of stand-up fights in the UFC. That's basically been all of her 3. And now she gets Ashley Yoder, who, on paper, Emily Ducote should just run right through. This should not be a fight. Ashley Yoder has lost her last 2 fights. Angela Hill, Jinyu fried her last fight July of 2021. It's been that long since Yoder has fought. She, again, has a 500 record. She's 8-8, and I believe she's, 3-8 in the UFC? 3-7 in the UFC? I don't understand. Her last win is a win back in 2020 over Miranda Granger, where she went out there and just out-wrestled Granger. Before that, you got to go all the way back to June of 2019 on a fight card in Greenville, South Carolina, where she beat Siri Kondo by unanimous decision. Again, Yoder's not great. She's just not. I think, again, she'll look to wrestle Emily Ducote. The problem is Emily Ducote has been taken down once in her UFC career. It was in her last fight against Lupita Godinez, where Lupi Godinez went 1 for 3 on her takedown attempts in that fight. It's hard to take a fighter like Ducote down. She's got a good or decent enough grappling game, a decent enough defensive wrestling game, and when this fight is on the feet, because this fight will be on the feet, probably for most of the fight, this is likely going to be a one-sided beatdown for Emily Ducote. Again, Yoder is 35 years old. She has not fought in 2 years. She's nearing the end of her career, I would say. Ducote, who again is 12-8, who has lost a lot, but still, she's fought in Bellator before. She fought for the Bellator Flyweight Championship. She's fought some good fighters. She has regrouped. She's won a lot of fights recently. I know she lost the last 2 to Godinez and Hill, but those are 2 good UFC fighters. Yoder should honestly probably not be the promotion anymore. I think Ducote goes in there and gives Ashley Yoder that negative record. I think Ducote wins a dominant 30-27 decision, and Ashley Yoder falls to a record of 8-9 after an Emily Ducote one-sided beatdown. Give me Ducote to win this fight by unanimous decision. Up next, we have got a fight here between Chris Gutierrez and Alatengheili. Fight was just kind of announced. Well, it was announced last week. I couldn't find odds currently for this, so I don't know I don't know what's up with that, but you've got Chris Gutierrez and Alatengheili in this fight. For Gutierrez, booked last week against Montel Jackson. I thought Jackson was going to go out there and win the fight. Of course, the fight never happened, so now Gutierrez goes out there and gets Alatengheili. Alatengheili, the Mongolian Knight with a record of 16 wins, 8 losses, and 2 draws, has been pretty good in the UFC. He's 4-1 in the UFC with back-to-back wins over Kevin Kroom and Chad Anheliger. The thing about Alatengheili, he has not fought the best guys in the UFC. I think his best win is definitely the Dana Bakary fight, even though for Bakary, this is a guy who, again, we talked about him, I believe, last week, where really good start to his UFC run and then just lost a couple and lost to Brady Keystan in his last fight. But for Alatengheili, he beats Dana Bakary in his UFC debut. Then he beats Ryan Benoit. He beats him by split decision. Then he drops a fight to Casey Kenny, loses one to Gustavo Lopez, beats Kevin Kroom, beats Chad Anheliger, and now here you are. I think his best win obviously is the Anheliger win. Or not, well, Anheliger win is good, but the best win is the Kevin Kroom win, where he goes out there and gets the finish in the first round against Kevin Kroom. He'll be getting Chris Gutierrez, which I feel like is just kind of a tough step up for Alatengheili. Like, yes, Alatengheili has fought some good guys. He has. It's just that Gutierrez, you look at his best win, obviously it's the Frankie Edgar win. I know, again, he was booked against Montel Jackson. I thought Montel Jackson was going to go out there and win the fight. Obviously, the fight never happened. He loses to Pedro Munoz in his last fight, but that's what's going to happen to you. And I had talked specifically about how in that potential Gutierrez and Montel Jackson fight, that was going to be, Gutierrez had gotten his shot in the top 15 before. Jackson hadn't just yet, and this was going to be Jackson's shot. The same thing applies here with Alatengheili. Alatengheili, again, good UFC record, hasn't really fought the guys to give him credibility just yet, and now here he gets it against Chris Gutierrez. This is his fight where, again, he'd get a former top 15 guy, a guy who's been tested against the likes of Pedro Munoz before. This is a real fight for Alatengheili against a real guy to bust into the rankings. So this is a big fight for both these guys. Again, Gutierrez is trying to stay in that 20-ish to 15 ranking, and then Alatengheili again is trying to break into that for the first time with a record of 4-1-1 in the UFC. I think Gutierrez is just better though. I think the striking game as a whole is a lot better. I know Alatengheili again has wins, but look at the wins that he does have. Ryan Benoit no longer in the UFC. He's got the loss to Casey Kenny, a draw against Gustavo Lopez, win over Kevin Kroom. Kroom never had the best UFC career, and then Chad Anheliger is a borderline guy in the UFC who's coming off the Contenders, won a fight, but really again not the best win either. This was originally supposed to be Hani Yahya in the spot against Alatengheili. Gutierrez, obviously, we talked about it at length. His opponent was supposed to be Montel Jackson. I think this is a fight that Chris Gutierrez goes out there and wins. I think he even gets a finish. I'm going to go second round TKO finish for Chris Gutierrez. I think the striking game is just that much better. I know Alatengheili has not been finished yet in the UFC, but he has been finished before. He lost in Road FC. He got knocked out in 2017. He got knocked out in 2014 as well, and I believe before that in 2013. I know that was a long time ago, but still, he has shown the susceptibility of getting knocked out in the past. I think Gutierrez delivers here, so I'm going to Chris Gutierrez to win this fight by second round TKO, picking up the dub over Alatengheili. Next up, back to the women's divisions, this time at 135 pounds. We've got Arina Alekseeva taking on the UFC debuting fighter in Melissa Dixon. For Irina Alekseeva, her only fight so far in the UFC is that win over Stephanie Egger. It's a fight where she misses weight and then she picks up the knee bar finish against Egger in the first round in just about 2 minutes. For Melissa Dixon, of course, making her UFC debut, did not find the Contender Series. She's coming off 2 back-to-back wins in Aries FC, her last one being a TKO finish against, at the time, an undefeated Russian fighter who was supposed to be on this card as well, taking on Tanera Lisboa, but a huge win in her last fight for, of course, Melissa Dixon. So Melissa Dixon's coming off that win over in Aries FC, now taking on Irina Alekseeva in this fight. Again, I didn't think Alekseeva was going to go out there and beat Stephanie Egger. It's a fight where she does miss weight. She's a pretty sizable underdog. She goes out there, picks up the win, has her 20-second long celebration. I don't think Alekseeva is all that good. I don't think she is. I think, again, she ran into Stephanie Egger and just caught her in a knee bar. I don't know if Egger's really the best either. It's a 3-3 UFC fighter who has lost to given good fighters before, but has also been submitted really early in fights before against the likes of Mayra Bueno Silva, right? Am I saying Alekseeva's at the capability level of Mayra Bueno Silva? No, I'm not, but I'm just saying, again, we have seen Egger go out there and get submitted early in the past. So now you get Dixon versus Alekseeva. Again, Melissa Dixon's grappling game has looked pretty good. She goes out there, she does, she does get takedowns. Her ground and pound's pretty solid. Again, not a fighter that's really going to go out there try to submit you, but she's going to try to work her ground and pound if she is able to get the fight down on the ground. So I think that's a big spot in this fight. I just think Melissa Dixon's all around the better fighter. I don't think Alekseeva is going to be able to get a submission off her back in this fight. I think Dixon is, again, good enough on the ground to the point where that's not going to happen. I think Dixon's going to be able to keep top control, and I think her striking game's better. I don't really like Alekseeva's striking game. I think, again, the wrestling game out of Dixon, though, was way better. I think Melissa Dixon wins this fight pretty easily. And she's a minus 140 favorite. Some people are going with Alekseeva plus 115 on Tapology. You get 38% going for Alekseeva, you get 62% going for Melissa Dixon. I think the British fighter wins this fight, though. Again, Dixon's top control, her grappling's all around better. Give me Melissa Dixon to win her UFC debut. She's going to go out there and beat Irina Alekseeva by unanimous decision. Next up, we have a fight here between Darren Elkins and TJ Brown. Elkins keeps on fighting. He's 27-11, taking on TJ Downtown Brown in this fight. For Elkins, coming off that loss over in Orlando in 2022, losing his last fight to JSP Jonathan Pierce, he will now get one TJ Brown, who does have double-digit losses, but for TJ Brown, coming off that loss, fight of the night fight in Kansas City, Missouri, April of 2023, it loses it to Bill Algeo, but a back and forth war. He ends up getting submitted early in the second round, but a very good 6-minute fight that was over in Kansas City. The pace of those two guys put on for 6 minutes was really good. Now, before that, for TJ Brown, picked up one over Alekseeva, won that fight by arm triangle in the third round. Lost to Shailan Nordin-Becca before that by unanimous decision, beat Charles Rosa, and then beat Kai Kamaka III before that. He gets the veteran in Darren Elkins. Again, you know who Darren Elkins is. He's 39 years of age. He did win, not his last fight against JSP, but beat Tristan Connolly before that by unanimous decision. And you know the type of fight that Elkins is going to get into, if I can speak English. The wrestling game, again, Elkins will always be there. He's going to always have that in his back pocket. So if it's to the point where, Elkins needs to steal around, or if he's losing the feet, he will result to shooting in for a takedown. Again, parts of that happened in the Connolly fight, close rounds. Elkins goes for takedowns. And even the Eduardo Garagori fight in 2020, that was kind of just a dominant wrestling performance from Elkins. But at the same time, you will get performances for Darren Elkins where they are just wars on the feet. Most notably, I think, as of late, was the Nate Landwehr fight in Jacksonville in May of 2020. But, that's what Elkins is going to try to. He's going to try to go out there. He's going to try to get in your face. He's a very tough guy to put down. The Derek Minner fight kind of proves that in 2021. I know he lost to Cub Swanson and again later that year, but Cub is still a very, good fighter at this point of his career for his age. I mean, he beat Hakeem Dawood. Was the decision great on that fight? No, it wasn't, but still, I think Elkins, again, he's not in his prime for sure, obviously, but Elkins can still go if he needs to, right? And this is a type of fight where against a guy in TJ Brown who is going to throw down with him. Brown will throw down too. TJ Brown has been submitted a couple times in the UFC. Now, is Darren Elkins a submission specialist? No, he's not. I mean, I don't know when his last submission win was against Eduardo Garagori. However, again, that might be something that Elkins is going to go to. Because, again, we have seen Brown submitted in the past. We saw Shailan Nordin-Becca see success in the ground. I know he did pick up a submission win over Alekseeva after he was able to get a transition basically on the ground. But, again, Algeo was able to submit him. Nordin-Becca saw success on the ground. Danny Chairez saw success against TJ Brown on the ground. And then, of course, he did go out there and out-wrestle Charles Rosa. But again, I always said that when Charles Rosa had fights in the UFC. Charles Rosa, if he's a better grappler, he wins. If he's not, then he obviously loses. I mean, I know that's pretty elementary to say, but that's kind of just the way Charles Rosa was in the octagon, right? So again, and this is kind of what this fight's based on too, is will Darren Elkins wrestle in this fight? Because if Darren Elkins wrestles, I think it's a pretty high path to success for him in this fight. I think it's a pretty easy path to success. If he's able to wrestle TJ Brown, I think he's going to give him a very tough time. And on the feet, again, you know what Darren Elkins is going to do. Elkins is going to get in your face. He's likely not going to go away. But can TJ Brown, again, sell in on his shots? And can TJ Brown basically out-wrestle Elkins at the same time? I think this fight's really dependent on who the better wrestler is, because both these guys have shown capability of wrestling before. Both these guys have been beat on the ground. Both these guys have won fights on the ground as well. So I think it's a really tough fight, but I'm actually going to go with the damage here. I'm going to take Darren Elkins to win this fight. I think Elkins, again, the wrestling game is where this fight is going to be won, and specifically in this fight, that's how Darren Elkins, I think, is going to win this fight. I think Elkins will out-wrestle TJ Brown. I'm going to take an underdog here. I'm going to take the plus 155 dog in Darren Elkins to go out there and win a decision against TJ Brown. The wrestling game is going to be huge. Once this fight does go on the feet, I think that TJ Brown will have opportunities as well. But again, you know how tough Elkins is on the feet. Sure, does he get beat on the feet sometimes? Yeah, but still, he's not going to go away. He will remain in your face. Are you going to knock him out? Likely not, even though he is 39 years old and he's taken a lot of damage. I think Elkins is able to stay in the fight. I think he's able to grind out a decision victory. I think it's going to be a good fight. Probably will win fight of the night if we're being honest, but give me the damage. I don't take Darren Elkins often, but I'm going to take him right here. Darren Elkins wins this fight by unanimous decision. On to our next one. What a fight here between Christian Rodriguez and Cameron Saaiman. A shame this one's on the undercard, but my goodness, what a fight this is. You get Christian Rodriguez, who's coming off of his win over Raul Rosas. Again, Rosas, I guess, has his hype again after winning his last fight against Terrence Mitchell. Saaiman is undefeated at 9-0, does own a win over Terrence Mitchell as well, but 3-0 in the UFC in Saaiman, taking on 2-1 in the UFC in Christian Rodriguez. Rodriguez's only loss being against the highly acclaimed Jonathan Pearce back in 2022 in his UFC debut. Christian Rodriguez is good. C-Rod is really good. If it wasn't apparent before the Raul Rosas fight, it is now. That's how good that guy is. He's a very good wrestler who has all the grappling skills in the world. He's good. Now, I think it does get overlooked that he did miss weight in the Raul Rosas fight. He weighed in 1.5 pounds over. Again, is that making all the difference in the world? It's not, but it's just, it's something to remember from that fight that I don't think gets talked about. But yeah, again, Rodriguez is good. His grappling game is really solid. I know his one loss against Jonathan Pearce, he did get out-wrestled, right? That's how he lost the fight. But Pearce, a very good wrestler in his own right, and as a guy who's rotating around and, might get close to the top 15 really soon. He gets Joynerson Bruthu in his next fight. I believe is that fight in Brazil? I think it's in Brazil. No, it's in the Apex. Of course it is. But again, Pearce is a guy who's, inching closer to the top 15, it feels like. And Christian Rodriguez is a guy who's, 25 years old. This will be his 11th professional fight against Cameron Saaiman. The guy's still young in his career. But you see what he was able to do to Josh Weems. He went in there, submitted Weems in the first round by Anaconda choke in the first round. Again, is Weems no longer in the UFC? He isn't. He got one fight, and then he got dropped from the promotion, which was interesting. Now he's going to fight bare knuckle MMA over with Jorge Masvidal. But again, for Rodriguez, you saw what he was able to do to Raul Rosas. Rosas basically just couldn't do anything in that fight. It was all Christian Rodriguez. It was Rodriguez grappling, basically. I know Raul Rosas won the first round, but after that, again, the second and the third, Christian Rodriguez completely neutralizes Raul Rosas, and that's what he's going to do to you. Now, Cameron Saaiman, different story. Saaiman is going to go in there, and he's going to try to wrestle. Or not try to wrestle, sorry. He's going to try to strike. He's trying to avoid the wrestling. You saw in his first fight in the UFC where he beat Stephen Koslow. Koslow, again, he's the one wrestling. Saaiman's trying to keep him on the feet. Koslow does have some success wrestling, though. He goes 5 for 9 in his takedowns. Saaiman is able to reverse that, though, 6 times in that fight. He is able to get 6 reversals in that fight against Stephen Koslow. So, again, it's not like Saaiman's wrestling game is bad. He's good defensively. In terms of grappling, he's good at switching positions. Again, Saaiman's got all the skills, right? You look at the Mana Martinez victory. Fight doesn't hit the mat. It's a striking affair. Saaiman wins it. He knocks down Mana Martinez in that fight. The Terrence Mitchell fight finishes Mitchell in the first round, and Mitchell goes 1 for 2 in his takedowns. Saaiman gets 2 takedowns in his own right in that fight. Again, 2 very young guys in this fight. 2 very young 135-pounders. Saaiman, 22 years old, coming out of South Africa. I believe he's from the same hometown as Dricus du Plessis. Pretoria, I believe it's what it is. Pretoria, South Africa. And then C-Rod, again, 25 years old, coming out of Milwaukee and Rufus Sport. This is a great fight. It just is, because there's so many moving parts to this one. I think on the feet, yeah, Saaiman's a better striker. I think he is. I think Saaiman's got a lot of power for 135. I think he's a very quick fighter. I think he's got a lot of skills up there. But on the ground, again, this fight is very close, too, because Christian Rodriguez, again, you saw him go out there. You saw him get a submission win earlier in his UFC career. You saw him neutralize a guy that has only lost once to Christian Rodriguez in Raul Rosas Jr. So you've seen that before out of Christian Rodriguez. And then you've also seen, again, Cameron Saaiman go in there. You've seen him knock down a guy like Mana Martinez. You've seen him have impressive fights in the feet. His finish win over Terrence Mitchell in his last one. This is just a really good fight with so many different details that could possibly happen in this one. Because, again, it's a razor-thin, close fight. It's a shame it's on the undercard because these are 2 young prospects at 135 pounds. Or it might be on the main card, I'm not sure, but it's 2 young prospects trying to make their way through the division. I think Cameron Saaiman gets the victory because this is the difference in this fight. Rodriguez, sure, I think he's the better wrestler. I think he's got better grappling, yeah. But I think Saaiman is competitive enough where he can switch positions on the ground. He can win in transitions. He can reverse positionings on the ground. My question is, can Christian Rodriguez remain all that competitive to the point where Saaiman's competitive on the ground, on the feet, right? Can Rodriguez remain that competitive on the feet against Cameron Saaiman? I don't know if he can. I think in those moments, I think that's where Cameron Saaiman really wins here. And I think eventually Cameron Saaiman is going to wear out Christian Rodriguez, and I think he's going to get a finish. Give me Cameron Saaiman to win this fight by second round TKO. Again, I think eventually he's going to find that shot, and I think eventually he's going to put down Rodriguez. Yeah, will Rodriguez have success on the ground? Sure. But I think Saaiman, again, will see some success as well. Will Rodriguez find success in the feet against Cameron Saaiman? That's tough for me, and honestly, I don't know if he is going to. So I think that's why Cameron Saaiman wins the fight. I think all around, the striking game out of Saaiman will prevail over the wrestling game of Christian Rodriguez because of Saaiman's grappling as well. I don't trust Rodriguez's striking against Saaiman's striking. So give me Cameron Saaiman. I think he stays undefeated. I think he goes 10-0, picks up the biggest win of his career, beating a guy who beat Raul Rosas Jr. Give me Cameron Saaiman to win this fight by second round TKO. Should be an incredible fight, but that's where we're going with Saaiman by second round TKO. Next up, we've got the rematch from UFC Noche. It, of course, is Edgar Chairez taking on Daniel Lacerda. Lacerda 0-4 in the UFC, but he gets another shot, 0-4 and 1 no contest for Lacerda in the UFC, but now he gets Edgar Chairez, a guy who does not have a win in the UFC either, even though he probably should. Now, okay, we can talk about that fight at UFC Noche, Mexican Independence Day. Chairez Lacerda won. Chairez is winning the fight. He's got the guillotine choke in on Lacerda. It looks like Lacerda goes out. The hand drops. Chris Tognoni stops the fight. Now, he doesn't check the arm of Daniel Lacerda. Lacerda was still with it. Now, it was very, it looked almost like the same thing. I know different submission, different position, obviously, in the Ben Askren, Robbie Lawler fight, but it looks sort of like that, right? Where Lawler drops the hand off of Ben Askren. Askren with the bulldog choke finishes him. Herb Dean stops the fight. It looks like Lawler obviously pops right back up to his feet. Lawler wasn't out. Now, in that case, I think Robbie Lawler went out. I think he did, and I think he came to right after. This fight with Lacerda and Chairez, I don't know if Lacerda was ever out. I don't know. It might have been the same thing, honestly, as the Robbie Lawler fight. That's a judgment call. You just don't know. I made the case about this with Ben Askren and Robbie Lawler. I'll make the same thing about this fight. If that choke was in for another 5 seconds, I think Edgar Chairez wins the fight, and we don't even have this discussion anymore. And that was the same case with the Ben Askren Robbie Lawler fight. I was like, okay, well, if Askren just had that submission in for a little bit longer, eventually he would have got the finish and Lawler just would have went out, or he would have tapped out, right? But it was just the premature stoppage showed that, okay, well, Lawler was still up. I think the same exact thing would have happened in the Chairez-Lacerda fight. I think Chairez was in an incredible position to win the fight that way. Now, is this fight going to be the same exact case? Who knows? Because again, it's a different night. It's going to be about a month later since their original fight. It's a completely different fight. Now, we've talked about it before, and Daniel Lacerda has been in the UFC for a while. He's had 5 fights in the promotion. He has not won one just yet, but you know what the guy can bring you. He will bring you an incredible fight, and he will bring you an action-packed fight, because that's what he does. He's an incredible fighter to watch. He brings a pace. He will definitely get knocked down, but he will try to knock down his opponent as well. He's got power for the weight class. It's going to make for an incredible fight, right? Now, I'm surprised they rebooked this so quickly, because this fight's at 130 pounds, not 125 like they usually fight at. Why wouldn't you just wait till these guys could rehydrate and get back? Well, obviously they're rehydrated, but why couldn't you guys wait? Why can't they just wait until these guys are ready to make 125 pounds? Why rebook it so quickly where they have to fight outside of the weight class, right? Like, you could have just booked this in a couple weeks. I mean, I don't understand why you couldn't just put Lacerda on the Brazil card like that. Again, Lacerda is a guy who should be fighting in front of a crowd. They fought in a crowd in their first fight, and now they're fighting in the Apex. Like, you should just put that fight in November in Sao Paulo. But now here you are in the Apex. It's fine, but they're at 130 pounds of catch weight. It doesn't really make sense. Now, again, Lacerda is a tough guy to pick. He just is, because you've seen what he's been able to do so far in the UFC. He hasn't won, obviously. Again, there will be great fights out of that, but that's the problem. Now, has Chairez found a way to beat Daniel Lacerda? Is it through grappling? Yeah, he kind of has. He's found a way to beat him grappling-wise. Will he go for a takedown against Lacerda? We'll see if we see that. Obviously, it was a standing submission that Chairez got against Lacerda. Again, will Chairez look to exploit that, and will he look to go to the ground? Maybe. But honestly, I'm going to stick with my original pick, and I think Edgar Chairez wins this fight, and I think he will get it done by knockout. I'm going to take Edgar Chairez to win this fight by first round KO because, again, I don't trust Daniel Lacerda's chin. I think Edgar Chairez's striking game may not be the greatest, but that's the type of fight Daniel Lacerda wants to fight. He is going to get that fight. I think Edgar Chairez is going to crack the chin. I am tempted to kind of pick Lacerda like I was in the first fight, but again, all things involved, I think the striking game obviously is still better at Lacerda. That doesn't, nothing from the first fight, everything from the first fight proved that. Again, Chairez was outstriking Lacerda for the first round of that fight. So nothing disproves that. And also now you get the factor of the grappling as well, which, oh, by the way, again, I think Chairez is the better grappler too. So how does Lacerda win this fight? He throws up a bomb and he knocks out Chairez. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Chairez is the better fighter as a whole. Edgar Chairez is going to win this fight. He's going to get it done by knockout in the first round, taking the same exact pick that we took on Mexican Independence Day. Give me Edgar Chairez to pick up the victory. I think he gets it done by first round knockout. And unfortunately for Lacerda, again, that will now officially call an end to his career for now in the UFC, but that will likely be it for him. Okay, on to our next one. Fight was just booked just a day ago. Michel Pereira taking on Andre Petroski. Originally supposed to be Pereira taking on Marc-Andre Berriot, but here instead you get him against Andre Petroski. Petroski's good. This is a guy, again, 10-1 in the UFC, 10-1 professionally, 5-0 in the UFC. I don't think anybody thought this is what we were going to get at Petroski when he came into the promotion. Again, he was coming off of a run in the Ultimate Fighter where he loses to Brian Battle. Petroski is the big favorite going into that, even though he just lost to Aaron Jeffrey in LFA before that, but still, he was the favorite going into that show. He doesn't win it. You thought that Petroski, after losing on the Ultimate Fighter, then okay, what is this guy really? He gets booked in the UFC, beats Michael Gilmore, beats Yao Zhang-Hu, beats Nick Maximov. Now you're getting started, beats Wellington Turman, and then his best win to date goes in there in Boston, UFC 292, and beats Gerald Meerschaert by split decision. That was huge for the career of Andre Petroski, and now you give him a guy, Michel Pereira. I think this fight is definitely based on if Andre Petroski is able to take down Pereira. Again, Pereira was originally booked, if you remember, against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson in Salt Lake City. That was the original fight for him. Obviously didn't make weight, and then obviously Wonderboy didn't want to fight the fight, which makes sense. Again, he's at that point of his career where he's looking for a world championship fight. Makes sense. They now rebooked him against Ian Gary, Shavkar Akhmanov. Big difference. You got Shavkar Akhmanov in his next fight. We'll see how that fight goes. I don't know. Ian Gary does not have a fight right now, right? No, does Ian Gary? No, he got Vicente Luque. He did get, okay, so on the same exact card, he got Vicente Luque. But Pereira, again, this is a guy on a 5-fight winning streak. He beats Imadaev in 2020. Beats him by rear naked choke in the third round. Imadaev was a UFC caliber, not entirely. Beats Cass Williams after that by unanimous decision in a fight that we thought we were going to get a finish, didn't get one. Then he beats Nico Price after that by unanimous decision, beats Andre Fiallo, and most notably and most recently, beats Santiago Ponzinibbio in a fight of the night. He beats him by split decision. Okay, all that being said, can Andre Petroski take him down? I really like the spot for Petroski on short notice. I think it's a really good opportunity for him. However, Pereira, a 94% takedown defense rate in the UFC. That's big. The guy does not really get taken down. And if Petroski's not able to take down Michel Pereira, he's a sitting duck on the feet. He just is. He's a sitting duck on the feet because sure, Petroski's striking game is getting better. He struck with Gerald Meerschaert, but again, that's Gerald Meerschaert. It's not Michel Pereira, who is a very good striker, who is going to, throw at you a bunch of different strikes, obviously. He's, if you watch the Tristan Connolly fight in Canada in Vancouver in 2019, he's going to do backflips, he's going to do all that stuff. He has toned that down a little bit, but he's still a funky striker who's going to throw a lot of different, looks at you. I don't think Petroski's really able to contend with that. So if Petroski's not able to get a takedown, I think it's going to be tough sledding for him, obviously. Because the last fight that he was kind of a sitting duck on the feet was the fight against Aaron Jeffrey. Jeffrey was the way better striker. You've seen what Jeffrey's been able to do in Bellator. Obviously, he just picked up his biggest win to date a couple months ago against Dalton Rosta. Aaron Jeffrey's good, and that's Petroski's only professional loss. So that's huge still, right? Again, Petroski's only lost to a really good guy. But this fight comes down to if Andre Petroski can take down Michel Pereira. Because if he's able to take down Pereira, we will see Michel Pereira in a spot that he has not been in the UFC, right? The only guy to take him down was Ponzinibbio, and Ponzinibbio had him down for 18 seconds, right? Pereira put himself on his back against Tristan Connolly, but that's because he did all the stupid stuff, right? He has not really been taken down and held down yet, and Andre Petroski could be the first guy to do that, but again, it's a position that we have not seen Michel Pereira in yet in the UFC. So how will he respond if Petroski does put him on his back and does hold him down there? Because again, Petroski is a better wrestler than anyone that Pereira has seen just yet. Right? So it's a very interesting fight. You're getting a guy in Petroski here on short notice. What will the cardio look like? I don't know the odds just yet for this, but on Tapology, at least 73% of voters going with Michel Pereira, 27% going with Andre Petroski. Again, it makes sense because of the takedown defense out of Pereira, and, he's been scheduled to fight. I think the Marc-Andre Barriault fight was a pretty easy and a pretty good fight for Pereira to win. I think he gets a much tougher fight now considering what Petroski brings. Still, though, I don't know if Pereira is able to, or I don't know if Petroski is able to take him down. So that's why I'm actually going to go with Michel Pereira to win this fight. I do like the opportunity for Petroski because if he wins the fight, he ends a 5-fight winning streak, 5-fight winning streak out of Pereira. Potentially gets a ranking after this. Still, though, on short notice, I don't know, again, especially with a wrestler who's going to have to go the full 15 likely. But who knows? Because, again, we haven't seen Pereira in the spot yet where he's on his back. Can Petroski find an arm triangle? Can he go out there and get a submission? I don't know. But again, he's going to have to keep that up for 15 minutes. I don't know if he's able to do that. I think Pereira is going to win this fight. I think the striking game's better. I give Michel Pereira to win this fight. I think he gets it done. Eventually, he's going to get a finish, I think. I'm going to go second round TKO for Michel Pereira. Or actually, no, I'll go third round TKO win for Michel Pereira. I think it's going to take time. But I think Pereira is, after losing the first round, I think Petroski might get that first takedown. But in the second round and the third round, I don't know if he's able to keep it up. I'm going to take Pereira to win the fight by third round TKO. Barely take third round TKOs, but that's what we're going with here with Michel Pereira. On now to a very good fight between Jonathan Martinez and Adrian Yanez. You have got even odds on this featured bout in, of course, the 135-pound weight class for Jonathan Martinez, 9-3 in the UFC, coming off his biggest win to date is a huge win over Said Nurmagomedov by unanimous decision. He gets one now. Adrian Yanez, who, Yanez has had his run, just coming off, though, a first-round knockout loss to Rob Font over in Miami at UFC 287 in April. So now here you go. Martinez is taking on Yanez, who is back 16-4. You look at the odds for this fight again, dead even on Tapology. You've got 43% going with Adrian Yanez, 57% going with Jonathan Martinez, making him the favorite on Tapology. We'll see. Both these guys have power. They both have power. Yanez obviously won that huge knockout streak when he made his way into the UFC, right? He comes in, beats Brady Hong on the Contender Series, beats Victor Rodriguez by knockout, beats Gustavo Lopez by knockout, beats Randy Costa by knockout, split decision close fight where he beats Davey Grant, finishes Tony Kelly, and then again it gets KO'd by Rob Font. For Jonathan Martinez, it's a guy who has seen, some highs and some lows in his UFC run, right? Comes in 2018 Moncton, I believe it was in Moncton, Canada, I think, or is it Halifax? I'm not sure. I think it's Halifax. That might be the same thing. I don't know my Canadian geography. Anyways, Jonathan Martinez loses to Andre Sokolov. Sokolov beats him. Sokolov knocks him down a couple times in that fight. So loses to Sokolov in his first UFC fight. Then wins a fight after that. Wins 2 fights after that. Loses to Andre Ewell. Fight where he loses by split decision. Is a fight that, I don't know. It's a close fight that maybe Martinez should have won. Beats Frankie Saenz after that, beats Thomas Almeida, loses to Davey Grant where he gets finished in the second round, and then he goes on his career resurgence where he wins 5 straight fights. The first one being over Zavid Lavashvili as the first fight of the night, October 2021, where the main event was Costa Vittori, but he wins that fight, the first fight of the night by decision. Then he goes in after that, he beats Alejandro Perez, and Perez's, re-entry in the UFC, beats Vince Morales after that, finishes TKO's Cub Swanson in October 2022, and then again it beats Said Nurmagomedov by unanimous decision. A very close fight where, again, all the wrestling pretty much was done by Said Nurmagomedov in terms of getting the fight down. Now, Jonathan Martinez only attempted 1 takedown in that fight, but 9 were attempted by Said Nurmagomedov. However, Jonathan Martinez was able to reverse positioning a lot in that fight, and basically almost every time Said Nurmagomedov got a takedown, it ended up with Jonathan Martinez eventually on top, and that's how Jonathan Martinez won that fight. So when you look at this fight, though, will much wrestling be done? I don't think so. I think, again, the wrestling was done in that fight a lot from Jonathan Martinez, considering you're taking on Said Nurmagomedov, right? And that's what Nurmagomedov is going to do to you. Yanez is going to be there to strike. Jonathan Martinez will be there to strike. Someone is probably going to get knocked out. Now, Yanez has got more power. Martinez is more of a point fighter where, if it comes to this and we're just seeing a striking fight for 15 minutes, which I think that's likely what we're going to see, I think you're going to see Yanez probably looking for the finish, and you're going to see Jonathan Martinez staying on the outside, trying to touch up Martinez with his jab, and just trying to stay on the outside. It's a good fight because can Yanez close distance, and can Yanez, again, he did get finished by Rob Font, but Rob Font's a true top 7 in the weight class, so I wouldn't really put that 2 against Adrian Yanez getting finished against Rob Font. Again, that's going to happen to you when you fight an elite fighter like Font is. And I'm not saying Jonathan Martinez is not that, but these are 2 guys, again, who are trying to make their way up the weight class as it seems. I don't know. Well, again, it depends on, because Yanez is probably going to have to close distance a little bit. I know the reach is basically exactly the same, but if Yanez is going to try to get his power shots off, will he get jabbed up coming inside? I don't know. I think it's a really close fight. Like, honestly, it's a really good fight here. Because again, you've seen the success Martinez has had. Has Martinez beat the best guys? Well, yeah, actually he has. I know the first couple fights on this win streak weren't the greatest. Again, Lavashvili, Perez, Morales, okay, sure, but then beats Cub, beats Said Nurmagomedov. Again, the Nurmagomedov fight's huge. And Yanez has fought some good guys as well. However, if you look back at the Yanez win streak, Victor Rodriguez, Gustavo Lopez, Randy Costa, Davey Grant, Tony Kelly. The only fight that honestly, again, Rodriguez no longer in the UFC, right? After losing to Bruno Silva. Gustavo Lopez, I don't believe no longer in the UFC, right? Yeah, he's an octagon now. The only guy on that winning streak that Yanez beat that's still in the UFC is Davey Grant. And Davey Grant took him to a decision. I know Davey Grant's good. And Davey Grant owns a win over Jonathan Martinez. So if you're playing MMA math, all right, Yanez beat Grant beat Martinez, so Yanez should win. It doesn't work like that. And MMA is full of matchups and how different guys fight each other, obviously, right? I think it's a razor-thin close fight. However, I'm going to take Adrian Yanez. He is the underdog on Tapology, but I'm going to take him to win. I think Yanez gets back in the win column. I think he overwhelms Martinez. I think, again, when Martinez was faced with a very good striker last, I know, again, Swanson's a good striker, but Said, there could be work to be done. There's work that can be done with Said on the feet, obviously. I think last time we fought a really good striker to the level of Adrian Yanez is Davey Grant. And Davey Grant put him down and knocked him out. I think Adrian Yanez will do the same exact thing, and I think he's going to do it in an even quicker fashion. I'm going to take Adrian Yanez to beat Jonathan Martinez. I think he's going to get back in the win column, and Adrian Yanez will win this fight by first round knockout. On to our co-main event. Interesting spot for this fight, honestly, because, do I care? Honestly, not that much. Jennifer Maia taking on Viviane Araujo. Araujo, the former headliner. Jennifer Maia, former title challenger. For Araujo, her last fight being that loss to Amanda Ribas by unanimous decision, and before that losing to the now champion in a main event, Alexa Grasso. So she's on a 2-fight losing streak, taking on a fighter who's on a 2-fight winning streak in Jennifer Maia. Maia, the slight favorite. Araujo, the slight underdog. So you get around -150 for Maia, around +125 for Araujo right now at the start of the week. I was surprised, and I forgot Araujo is 36 years old. She is about 2 years older than Jennifer Maia, which I kind of didn't realize. Considering, I guess, Jennifer Maia's just been at the top for a very long time. She's just been hovering around the top 5 for a very long time in the UFC. Again, Maia's on a 2-fight winning streak. Araujo's on a 2-fight losing streak. Araujo's only win in her last 4 since 2021. Her only win is Andrea Lee, where she beat Lee by unanimous decision. Lee's been losing a lot of fights recently. Again, so how did she lose the fights to Ribas and Grasso? Well, the Grasso fight, again, not many fighters are going to go out there and outstrike Alexa Grasso for 25 minutes. That's just not going to happen. Grasso is that good. Again, Grasso has developed her game where she's becoming a really good striker at 125 pounds. Her grappling's getting better too, but again, Alexa Grasso outstruck Araujo for 25 minutes in the main event. That's going to happen to you. The Ribas fight, Amanda Ribas goes out there and just kind of dominates, really. Ribas is the better wrestler, better grappler. She outstrikes Araujo as well and just all around wins the fight. Araujo gets dominated in that one. It's 30-26. It's not a competitive fight. Now you're giving her Jennifer Maia, who is coming off a win over Casey O'Neill, where the fight did not hit the mat. Maia tried for 4 takedowns, couldn't get her down, so it's just a striking affair. And to the surprise of some, Jennifer Maia went out there and outstruck Casey O'Neill and did that basically for every single round. You can make the case O'Neill won the last round, but Jennifer Maia went out there and basically just outstruck her the entire fight. Before that, she beats Marina Moroz by unanimous decision. Sure, I believe I took Moroz in that fight, but it's been the striking game recently out of Maia that has won her fights. But I think the difference can be made here in terms of, sure, yeah, the striking out of Maia is getting better, but also the wrestling and the jiu-jitsu, well, not the wrestling, but the jiu-jitsu is always in the back pocket. So if Maia is able to get a takedown, I think her ability to keep the fight there and her ability to remain on top is going to be absolutely huge, which is going to make it tough on Araujo to win the fight, considering Araujo has had a lot of difficulty with wrestling in recent fights. Obviously, you look immediately right back to her last fight against Amanda Ribas, right? She gets beat down there, and then Grasso outstruck her. Am I saying Jennifer Maia's on par with Grasso striking-wise? Obviously not, but there's just something to keep out of, keep a lookout of. I think Maia wins the fight. It's hard to pick a fighter here in Viviane Araujo, who's actually 5-4 in the UFC, who's lost back-to-back fights, fighting a fighter who's won back-to-back fights. And Maia, again, the jiu-jitsu's in her back pocket. She's really good down there. She won a round against Valentina Shevchenko in a championship fight because she was able to get Shevchenko down and out-grapple her and hold her down and have top control. And, who's to say she's not going to do that against Araujo? And, oh, by the way, again, Maia's been winning her fights recently by striking. She had a back-and-forth solid fight against Casey O'Neill in her last one where she outstruck O'Neill. I know O'Neill's hype has definitely died down, but that's what Maia did in her last fight. Araujo's been getting outstruck and outgrappled. I'm going to take the fighter who's won her last two fights, and I'm going to take Jennifer Maia to win this fight by unanimous decision. Am I all that excited for in a co-main event spot? I'll be honest with you, I'm not, but I think Jennifer Maia goes out there, the former title challenger, beats Viviane Araujo. She'll get it done by unanimous decision as we move on to the main event of the evening. Here we go. Super Sodiq Yusuff in the featherweight division, taking on Edson Barboza. It will be Sodiq Yusuff's first main event spot, taking on Edson Barboza Jr. in this fight. I believe, yeah, Edson Barboza Jr. Junior Edson Barboza, I think he goes by, right? Anyways, Barboza, 37 years old, right? You think he's, over the hill after he loses back-to-back fights to Giga Chikadze and Bryce Mitchell, the Chikadze fight being in a main event spot, and then he just got out-wrestled by Bryce Mitchell for 15 minutes. Bryce Mitchell did not bring the Bible in the octagon for that fight. However, I think he will now after he beat Dan Ige. But Barboza in his last fight beats Billy Quarantillo in Kansas City, knocks him out with a knee in the first minute, a huge result in that fight, and that, the biggest possible win for Barboza in that fight was not a 15-minute decision. It was a knockout in the first round. That's exactly what he got. So now Barboza parlays that into a main event spot against Super Sodiq Yusuff, a guy who has not fought in the octagon in over a year. And his last fight was against a 12-3 Don Chairez, who got cut from the UFC after losing back-to-back fights to Sodiq Yusuff and Jack Jenkins. That was Yusuff's last fight, was Don Chairez, and he did exactly what he's supposed to do to Don Chairez. The fight was not competitive at all. Again, Don Chairez, I believe, was like a plus 1,000 dog in that fight. It makes sense. In that fight, Sodiq Yusuff got him down, submitted him in 30 seconds. It was not competitive. Before that, Yusuff won, in all fairness, kind of a boring fight against Alekseeva in March of 2022. Lost to Arnold Allen before that. Beat Andre Fili. Had a knockout win over Gabriel Mowgli Benitez in 2019 at UFC 241. Beat Saaiman Moraes before that. Again, Yusuff has a good UFC resume. Well, he's got the wins. He's 6-1. Has Sodiq Yusuff really beat the best guys, though? His best win's Alex Caceres. I know Caceres is in the top 15, right? But still, other than Caceres, the wins aren't that great. The Fili win okay, but Andre Fili's lost his fair share of fights in the UFC. I think it's a tough fight for Sodiq Yusuff. I really think it is, because Barboza's going to probably, he's going to be forced to strike with Edson Barboza in this fight. Likely that is what's going to happen in this one. You see what Edson Barboza does to a lot of these guys in the feet, right? Barboza is still very quick for being 37 years old, for being now at 145 pounds, down a weight class still from his original 155. But Barboza still goes out there and has really competitive striking fights with these guys. Sure, Yusuff's got power, but all around as a striking game, I do like Edson Barboza more. I think, yeah, sure, Yusuff is a strong guy who's got power on the feet, yeah. But Edson Barboza has got the kicks. He's going to break you down. He's going to work all parts of the body. And Barboza just makes it tough on guys, right? Again, you thought that was going to be the breakthrough fight for Billy Quarantillo in his last fight. Well, Barboza halted that and knocked him out in the first round. Obviously, we just saw a main event last week where Bobby King Green went in there. And this is kind of the spot like we have here, right? It's almost identical. The veteran Bobby Green goes out there and beats Grant Dawson, who basically has his coming out party, right? This is the same exact thing. Yusuff is being promoted by the UFC here, trying to get him in a main event spot against a guy they can build his name off of in Edson Barboza. They want to build Yusuff's name off of Edson Barboza. And Barboza could just, be the veteran and win the fight. Now, he's not as big of an underdog as Bobby King Green was, but I think it's a possibility. I really think it is. I don't know how much the grappling is going to play into a factor here. If anything, again, Yusuff will probably try to shoot, but Edson Barboza's grappling game has been pretty solid. Again, Bryce Mitchell was able to get takedowns. Makwan Amirkhani was able to get takedowns. So I think if anything, again, Yusuff will look towards that route, but Edson Barboza's grappling game has been decent enough, and his defensive wrestling game is solid enough where I don't think he's going to get stuck on his back for 25 minutes. I don't think that's going to be the style of fight we're going to get here. I think to a certain extent we are going to get a striking fight because Yusuff has not been the best at getting takedowns. He's only got 12% accuracy in the UFC. The last time he got a takedown was Chairez. Before that, he doesn't have another one. That's the only takedown that Yusuff has. Right, the Yanez fight, he submitted him, but still, you're going to see a striking affair. Does Yusuff have the power to put down Barboza? I don't know. I think Edson Jr. Barboza is going to break down Sodiq Yusuff in this fight, and I think he's going to wear on him. And I actually think Edson Barboza is going to win this fight. I'm going to go a 4th round TKO victory for Edson Barboza in this fight. Yusuff has not been 25 minutes. I think, again, Edson Barboza is the veteran. We have not seen Sodiq Yusuff in over a year. Now, this could be one of two things. It could be, all right, Yusuff comes back a monster. He's a way better fighter than we last saw him, or he hasn't fought in a year, there's ring rust, right? We just don't know. And again, you go from fighting Don Yanez, who is not a UFC caliber fighter, to fighting a guy who has had 30 UFC fights, who's fought some of the best guys in the world in Edson Barboza. There's a big difference there. Huge difference. I don't know if Yusuff is ready for the moment, and I'm taking Edson Jr. Barboza. I think I'm sold on the Quarantillo victory. I think Barboza is going to break him down. I don't think it's going to be a quick finish like that, but I think over time, again, Edson Barboza will break down Sodiq Yusuff, and he will eventually finish him in the 4th round. I think it's going to be like the Dan Hooker fight where he finished Hooker with a body shot in the 3rd round. I don't know if it's going to be a body shot that's going to win this fight for Edson Barboza, but I think it's going to take a little bit of time. But Edson Barboza is going to be the first guy to finish Sodiq Yusuff in the UFC. He got finished by TKO in 2017 Titan FC, but in the UFC, I think Edson Jr. Barboza is the first guy to finish Super Sodiq Yusuff. Give me Barboza to win this fight. I like him to take it by 4th round TKO. I don't know if it's going to be through a body shot or it's going to be, again, through a knockout, but still, I'm taking Edson Jr. Barboza to win this fight. I think he is the all-around better striker, and I don't think Sodiq Yusuff is able to get that one shot to put him down, and I don't think Yusuff is able to strike him for 25 minutes, nor do I think Yusuff is able to take him down and hold him down. So everything to me points to an underdog victory in the main event. I'm going to take Edson Jr. Barboza to win the fight by 4th round TKO. And folks, that'll do it for our fight night predictions, of course, this Saturday with Sodiq Yusuff and Edson Barboza in the main event. We'll be back next week for UFC, 294, Makhachev versus Oliveira 2 from Abu Dhabi. What a fight card that is. I think you got 14 fights in that card, 13 fights. Paulo Costa, Khamzat Chimaev is the co-main event of that card. It is a tremendous fight card. You're not going to want to miss it next week. We'll be back for those predictions. But again, folks, thanks for watching. Make sure that subscribe button down below for more. If you disagree with any of the picks, make sure to comment in the comment section down below and like this video as well if you did enjoy. Again, folks, thanks for watching, and Mamba forever.